Every class in Cataclysm gets changed in some way, shape or form, some more drastic than others, like Hunters going from using a mana bar to now a focus bar, or even Warlocks no longer needing soul shards in their bag. And the Mage is no exception. The Mage in fact gets some small changes that might not sound that big on paper, but they're absolutely incredible when you're actually playing the class. In fact, there's so many, trying to actually get it down to 10 top changes was very difficult, but we're going to give it a go. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, be sure to subscribe for more Cataclysm Classic content to get you ready for launch. You might as well hit the like button while you're down there as well, and feel free to drop a comment. So today we're going to look at my top 10 changes for the Mage that's going to be coming, I say in Cataclysm, but really it's going to be the pre-patch. Now, if you don't know, the pre-patch should be in two parts if it's the same as it was historically. So you'll get all your class changes first, and then there'll be more systematic changes that come in the second part of the pre-patch, which will bring things like archaeology in. But that definitely sounds like something for another video. So anyway, coming in at number 1 has to be Combustion. Now, Combustion, since all the way back in vanilla, has existed, but it's always been fairly lackluster. It's always been a nice ability to pop because it's just increasing your critical strike chance for every spell that you cast, but now it's actually a really, really powerful DPS cooldown. In fact, probably one of the best in the game. So what Combustion now does is, on a 2-minute cooldown, it combines your damaging periodic fire effects on an enemy target but does not consume them. So that's important. You're not trading the dots for a new dot. You've got all your current dots on there and then this new one, which is obviously going to be incredibly powerful. If you've got really big ignites ticking, you've got a pyroblast on there, a living bomb, all of that combining into one single dot. And on top of that, it also instantly deals some fire damage as well. And this is over 10 seconds, but obviously it is affected by haste. So on the tooltip here, it's showing 9.81 seconds. And the reason it's a really interesting ability is because of point number 2, which we'll get onto in a second. But with the way we rely on weak auras nowadays, using a weak aura to actually track how much fire damage you've actually got on the target is going to make such a big difference. Because back in the day, or even on private servers to a certain extent, it is luck based. You're going a little bit on, oh, that felt like a really good time to use Combust because I got a couple of crit pyroblasts back to back. Looks like the ignite's ticking really big, so then you pop Combustion. But really, you want to know exactly when the right time is to use Combustion, and there is actually some add-ons that have helped in the past, such as Combustion Helper, where the goal of the add-on is to allow easy optimization of the use of Combustion, because it tracks all the relevant dots on your target and the cooldown on Combustion as well. So what you'll be looking for when you're using this ability is a really, really high number. So the whole spec really plays really big around this one cooldown, because the difference between being top DPS or bottom DPS or third DPS is going to be around how good your Combustion usage is. We could sit and talk about Combustion for hours, but we'll move on to number 2, which really plays another big role for Combustion itself. And it's actually a talent which affects Fire Blast, so it's Impact, which you'll be familiar with because Impact is not a new talent, but it has been reworked. So it gives your damaging spells a 10% chance to reset the cooldown on Fire Blast, and to cause the next Fire Blast that you cast to stun the target for 2 seconds and spread any fire damage over time effects to nearby enemy targets within 12 yards. So this is huge, because this means where you've got your big Combustion, which is going to do a lot of damage, you can now actually spread it to all targets around it as well. Not only that, with the talent Pyromaniac, it increases spell haste by 10% if 3 or more targets are taking fire damage over time from your spells. So if you're naturally cleaving because you're using impact procs when it's up, there's going to be a lot of uptime on your 10% spell haste from Pyromaniac, because there's a hell of a lot of ad fights in Cataclysm in general. The only slight downside to impact is it is a 10% chance. So you've got to wait until you've got an impact proc before you can use Combustion if you know you're wanting to spread it to a lot of targets. And if you get really unlucky and it just won't proc when all of your cooldowns are up and you want to use your Combustion, or you've just had some big crits and you just want to get that Combustion off, it can be quite frustrating trying to line the two up. But that's the beauty of Mage. It has been and always will be quite an RNG spec when you're playing fire. But overall, even though it's a little bit of a frustrating mechanic, because as I say, the odds of you wanting an impact proc at that time where you're ready to use your Combustion, you haven't got one, It is frustrating, and actually trying to get some footage for this video probably took me about 10 minutes of just standing there trying to get the stars to align. So if you think when Cataclysm comes out the RNG aspect of Fire Mage may be disappearing, you'd be very wrong. Next up is a super quick one, and there's really not a great deal to say: Time Warp. So Time Warp has made my number 3 purely because it is amazing that we don't have to rely on shamans for it now. It's not only mages that get the ability to use a heroism/bloodlust type ability, because hunters' pets also get it, and I would have covered that in the hunter video. If you haven't seen that, check it out. There's quite a few classes done now. I actually think I've only got 3 or 4 classes left to get through. I'll put a link to the playlist in the description below. But Time Warp does as you would expect: warp the flow of time, increasing melee range and spellcasting speed by 30% for 40 seconds. Like I said, not really a lot to say. Mages now get heroism or bloodlust, so no longer do we need shamans. Just get rid of them. Although they do really good damage in Cataclysm, actually. And then coming in at number 4 is another new ability, and the new ability is called Flame Orb. So it launches a Flame Orb forward from the mage's position, dealing 1.7k fire damage every second to the closest enemy target for 15 seconds. It also then explodes at the end of its duration. Now this can actually be changed so it's not just fire. If you was to go frost, it can convert it from a flame orb into a frost fire orb. Now it will benefit from all of your frost specialization talents, and it will also slow the targets. So as you can imagine, in PvP, the frost fire orb is absolutely amazing. Now it's a lot of extra damage for something that's only on a 1-minute cooldown. It's worth mentioning though that if you want the explosion from the flame orb, you do need firepower as a talent, which increases the damage of your fire spells by 3%. And it's actually this that gives the Flame Orb a 100% chance to explode at the end of its duration. So it might not be the most exciting ability, but it's just a great way to get extra damage on a 1-minute cooldown. And as I say, for PvP, if you're Frost, it's absolutely amazing. Another really quick one, because it's just a new ability that you're going to get, but Ring of Frost. Now, Ring of Frost is on a 2-minute cooldown, and it summons a Ring of Frost taking 3 seconds to coalesce. Enemies entering the fully formed ring will become frozen for 10 seconds. This lasts 12 seconds and has a 10-yard radius. Now, this probably screams straight away PvP. And yes, it's absolutely amazing in PvP, but it's also got really good uses in PvE. For gathering mobs in one particular area, saving your healers in some circumstances. It's just an all-round really good utility ability that you will use outside of just PvP. But most people will instantly look at Ring of Frost and just be like, yeah, it's a PvP talent. Amazing for putting it down at bases, for example, in a Raffi Basin when someone's trying to actually capture the point. Freezing flag carriers in Warsong Gulch. It's just got a lot of different use cases, and it's just a great addition to the toolkit. Next up is how Hot Streak and improved Hot Streak has actually changed. And to understand that, you really need to understand how Arcane Missiles has changed. Up until this point, Arcane Missiles has just been a standard ability with a mana cost, and you use it and it fires missiles out. Well, now it's actually a free spell, but it does have a chance to proc. So you have to get the proc to be able to use it. And it launches 3 waves of Arcane Missiles, as you would expect, doing X amount of damage every second. But the key is at the end of the tooltip here. So each offensive spell you cast has a 40% chance to activate Arcane Missiles. So when you are actually Arcane Spec'd and you look at the bar, you can see Arcane Missiles cannot be used. But after casting one single Arcane Blast, now it's usable, and you're looking for that buff called Arcane Missiles. Now, the reason this is important for fire is because when you take the talent Hot Streak, your spells no longer trigger Arcane Missiles. Instead, your critical strikes with Fireball, Frost Firebolt, Scorch, or Pyroblast, or even Fire Blast, have a chance to cause your next Pyroblast spell cast within 15 seconds to be instant cast and cost no mana. And then when you improve it, anytime you score 2 non-periodic critical strikes in a row with your Fireball, Frostfight, just all of those abilities, you have a 100% chance to trigger your Hot Streak effect. So like there you saw, it was one single crit from a Scorch that actually allowed Hot Streak to proc. So whilst there's still a lot of luck-based where you've got to get 2 crits in a row, the 2 crits in a row guarantee your Pyroblast to proc. But if it's just one single crit of something, that can also get it to proc. So the way it works now just means you should be seeing a lot more Hot Streaks than you have up until this point. Now, the reason I wanted to add this to the list is because it's actually one of the things that I really do like, because when we're first level 85 in cata, our crit chance is going to be quite low. And a lot of people will start as Arcane before they move on to being Fire, but I personally want to be Fire right off the rip. Having Hot Streak like this does just make it a bit more accessible with lower levels of crit. And up at number 7 is Quarterrise. Now, again, this will be a quick one because it's just a new, I was going to say ability, but it's not really an ability. It's a passive talent, but it's really good. Quarterrise gives you a 100% chance when there's an attack that would normally kill you, instead to bring you to 40% of your health. However, you'll burn for 12% of your health every 1.5 seconds for the next 6 seconds. And this effect cannot occur more than once a minute. Now, this thing will save your life so many times. Yes, after it procs, you are going to need a quick heal, but the amount of times that you've over-aggroed and got one-shot by something because the tank can't hold aggro or you can't manage your threat, which is not a dig because I'm exactly the same. Well, this thing might just save you, and with a low internal cooldown of only being a minute, this will save you a lot. There's not really much more to say about it because it is just a talent, it is just a passive, but it is an absolutely amazing addition to a Fire Mage's toolkit. You might notice something strange here. I appear to be moving whilst casting. You can cast Scorch while moving, which is absolutely amazing. And this could quite possibly be my favourite change, just because it feels so good to be able to run along spamming Scorch and then using Pyroblast procs when they go off. It just feels amazing. Well, this is actually thanks to the talent Firestarter. This allows you to cast Scorch while moving. Again, this is a very quick one and there's not a lot to say, but there's lots of movement on bosses in Cataclysm Classic, and this is just going to help out a ton because you can keep your living bomb up while you're moving, you'll be spamming Scorch as a filler, and then you'll be using your hot streaks on instant Pyroblasts. The punishment for having to move as a Fire Mage just, I'm not going to say it becomes irrelevant because of course you would still rather be stood doing fireballs, but it's really not a bad thing to have to move anymore. So this absolutely had to make the list, and I appreciate we've spoke a lot about Fire, so what about Arcane? It's definitely not as engaging or feel quite as rewarding as playing Fire, but the improvements that have been made to Arcane Blast alongside Arcane Explosion are just really cool. So starting with Arcane Blast, not really a lot has changed here. It does a big amount of damage, and each time you cast it, it's going to do more damage and cost more mana. It's also reducing the cast time each time as well. But what you'll notice here is the effect stacks 4 times, which we're used to, and it lasts 6 seconds, or until any arcane damage spell except Arcane Blast or Arcane Explosion is cast. And you might be like, well, why are you making a big deal out of that? That's the same. Well, it's actually not, because Arcane Explosion can be cast without it using this, but it also increases the damage of Arcane Explosion. So Arcane is actually pretty strong in AoE as well now, as long as you can get those 4 stacks up and keep them up. So like you can see, getting your Arcane Blast stacked up and then using Arcane Explosion, it actually does pretty good damage. Not only that, you can also pick up improved Arcane Explosion, which reduces the global cooldown of your Arcane Explosion spell by ½ second and reduces the threat and reduces the mana cost. So not only is Arcane Explosion incredibly cheap to cast, it's buffed by Arcane Blast, and you can spam them off pretty damn fast. So the way Arcane plays is really cool because it really revolves around 2 different phases. You've got a burn phase and you've got a preservation phase. When you've got some way of getting your mana back, you know you can burn, so you're going to use all your cooldowns and you're just going to pump Arcane Blast, Arcane Blast, Arcane Blast. Yeah, just literally keep pressing that one button until you're practically and then get your mana back, and then starts the preservation phase where you're just going to try and keep your mana bar as high as possible until you've got everything back again and you're ready to absolutely blast. Now in 5-man dungeons, it's incredibly fun just to completely melt bosses as Arcane, whereas on multi-target I have a lot more fun as Fire. But Arcane as a whole had to make number 9 on here purely because it is an incredibly fun spec to play if you like to just burst and see really big numbers really quickly, and then it sort of turns a bit more boring after that. And then finally coming in at number 10 is Summon Water Elemental. What you currently use as a cooldown in Wrath of the Lich King is now a permanent pet. It has got a 3-minute cooldown, but whenever you're dealing spell damage, your Water Elemental's also going to be healed. And one of the biggest benefits is Fingers of Frost. So we all know what Fingers of Frost does, where your chill effects get a chance to make your next 2 frost spells act as if the target was frozen. But now you can get improved freeze as well, where when you use your Water Elemental's freeze ability, it's got a 100% chance to grant 2 charges of Fingers of Frost, which is absolutely amazing because now you can force charges, where at this point in Wrath of the Lich King, for example, it's just completely luck-based. You can very reliably get charges when you need them, and from a pet that you're just going to have with you all the time. And the other really good thing about Summon Water Elemental is how early you get it. If you decide to level a Mage, you're going to have a Water Elemental by your side all the way from level 10 till 85. Frost overall, though, don't really change that much, and I'd say outside of talking about Frostfire Orb, that's why I've not mentioned a great deal about Frost. Of course, we will dive more into all of these talents on the real deep dive videos that will be really long, where we more or less compare every talent for talent from Wrath to Cata, and you'll know every single ability's minor changes, but this one I wanted to keep as just the big top 10 for me. There is one more that I'm going to throw in, a little bonus. Mainly because it's going to take no talking about whatsoever because it is that minor, but I love the fact that we've now got Mage Ward. So Mage Ward absorbs fire, frost, or arcane damage, but it's all in one ability. So ordinarily we've got Fire Ward or Frost Ward, and they both share the cooldown. Now you've just got one button that does it all, and arcane damage just thrown in there as a bonus. Like I said, that last one was going to be quick. I'm going to leave it there. I hope you enjoyed the video. Check out all the other classes. I'll have all of these done over the next couple of weeks, so if you want to wait, I'll probably put all of the classes into one big video so you can sit there and just binge them all at once. But like I say, like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.